Welcome to the Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee, which is she. I am Sidney Brown. Hey, that's me. You can go to SidKid80 on the Twitter and the IG. Once again, at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
Follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, too, you can catch up on any of our live shows, including this one, Second City Sports. If you happen to miss them, you can watch them and catch and listen to them at your own leisure. And also, make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, that's Sports Zone Chicago on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to catch the audio version of this podcast, Second City Sports, you can do so by subscribing to War on Anchor. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type this in your search engine boxes on those podcast platforms. You ready? WARR on Anchor. One more again, as your kids would say. WARR on Anchor. And you can follow War Media at WARR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, at WARR Media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We're unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have an opinion on any of our topics during our 2-hour extravaganza for our first show during for the month of March, you can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. As our number one golden rule, if you happen to disagree, just disagree without being disagreeable. But if you decide to troll and or do something stupid or dumb, Lakeena will give you the Rob Manfred, Grayson Allen boot.
Well, I'll probably be a little nicer about it, but yeah, anyway, bye-bye.
Lakeena, the 2022 MLB season has been put on hold because the players and the owners cannot come to an agreement on ending the lockout. Of course, the owners have locked out the players. I know they met yesterday in New York, the head of the Players Association and the head of the representative of the owners. They met for 90 minutes yesterday. I guess cooler heads have prevailed, sort of. But, Lakeena, I feel like, I hate using this phrase, but I feel like the bridesmaid, never the bride. And I feel like the rug has been snatched from underneath us as fans. After following everybody on Twitter earlier this week, Monday night into Tuesday, the owners met with the players for 15 hours on Monday. The Tuesday had the 4 p.m. Chicago time deadline.
Yes.
The owners played the players almost like a bunch of sucker MCs, as you kids would say. And the players said afterwards they knew what the owners were trying to do. They are standing in solidarity. We get this as business, Lakeena, but the 28 years of peace, labor peace since the 94 strike is all but done. The first week of games from March 31st to March the 6th or the 7th around there has been canceled. We don't know if those games will be made up. Lakeena, opening day will happen. It will just be delayed. And call me a pessimist, but I think there's more signs of trouble ahead. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm thinking it's heading in that direction.
I've told you, Sid, and I know we've said this offline. You said that you're the optimist, and you wanted maybe they had a chance, perhaps maybe working it out. But if you saw Rob Manfred's presser, it just didn't seem like Lord Voldemort, if you will, like some of the names that they've been calling him. And if you look, seeing guys like Mike Trout, who doesn't really comment on these kinds of things, sort of say, look, these folks are. These owners, they're not. Look, we have our reasons for doing what we're doing. The owners don't have our best interest, and that's that. And good on the MLB Players Association. They set up a fund for about $1 million for guys like who don't really make a lot of money, who don't make the millions and millions of dollars. They set up a fund for them so that guys can have some money coming in, without having to play, without them playing games so far. So that's a good on the Players Association and on that front. Now, the first week of games have already been canceled. They won't be made up. And look, it's going to be interesting to see who blinks here, because the players are standing in solidarity. The owners right now, I look in some places, especially here in Chicago. Okay, fine, no baseball in March or early March to late March, early April and such, it's still snowing in some places around the country, including here. So if you're one of those folks, you're thinking, you know what? Okay, fine. Now, once we get into May and June, which is when, kids are starting to get out of school and, and such, folks, can kind of, come, take days off to like, to go to the games, and, the weather's going to be warming up. So that's when you wonder, okay, who's going to blink here? Will it be until May or June where all this happens? You hope it doesn't get to that point, but I don't know. I think at this point, Sid, I mean, they're going to be locked out for a while, I feel like.
I think the owners will have to get creative with their proposals to get the players back on the field. We all, as you said, the players want to get back on the field. They're in solidarity right now. And I don't know if you read the article from our good friends at Awful Announcing, but they were talking about these regional sports networks. Of course, NBC Sports Chicago is the exclusive home of the White Sox. Of course, you have the Marquee Network, the Cubs TV network. After 25 games, it's going to dish out a rebate, and those owners, even though they could sit out the entire season, we saw that in 2020 due to the pandemic without having any fans in the stands. And the reason why all these 4 major pro sports here in the United States got paid because of the TV contracts. But those regional sports networks invest a lot of money into broadcasting those games, roughly about 142 on average for all the major league teams. Of course, we all know about the national television contracts that got re-upped with Turner Sports, Fox, ESPN especially. And we'll get into the competitive balance tax and some of the numbers in just a moment. But this number really hits home. The players wanted the 12-team playoff expansion. It looks like we're going to get that eventually. But the owners want a 14. You want to know why? Because of the big paycheck from ESPN. That's why. If the owners would have gotten their way with the 14 expansion of the playoffs, ESPN were going to cut them $100 million check. With the 12-team playoff, ESPN was going to give them $85 million. So you do the numbers there. You use common sense. But I think the owners will cave in a little bit only because technically they don't need the fans in the stands, but people care. Those people deep down care about optics. And the longest this goes on, you're going to lose a whole lot more fans. Major League Baseball already has a marketing problem and a PR problem, and starting with Commissioner Rod Manfred. But if they don't get on the field by at least late April, it's going to get ugly. As I said before, and I say it again, it's going to get worse, much worse than 1994. I know 1994, we didn't have playoffs or World Series. Technically, that was supposed to have been the first year of the wild card, and it had to be pushed back a year. But this could potentially get worse if we start in late and early May or perhaps June. I don't think it's going to get that far, but it's going to get ugly if we have no games in April.
The whole thing about this is that I always feel like, and I've said this for years, and you know this, Sid, the season's too long. The baseball season's too long anyway. 162 games plus, you got wild card, they got divisional series and playoffs, the LCS, and then the World Series. That's a long time. I mean, the Braves didn't beat the Astros. They didn't clinch that to when was that? Like mid-November, like a couple.
It seems that the way.
I mean, it's sort of one of those things where you sort of say to yourself, "Hold up, okay, let's think about this for a second. Are we seriously thinking that maybe let's add another wild card? Okay, fine. You're making the season a little even longer. Now, my proposal has always been cut the first month of regular season, cut the last month of regular season. You have about 100 games, maybe 110 or whatever, give or take. Do the I don't know, do maybe start in late April and maybe in mid-May, and then probably go into finish by September, early September by Labor Day. And then you can have your playoffs and your extra wild cards and whatnot. Then you can have the season can be over with before Veterans Day. So you're going into having it this long. You're going into college and pro football, college basketball, it kind of in the early stages. So is the NBA. So you're at that point where your season's already too long anyway, I feel like. So if you're in that realm of let's try to make the season longer. I mean, you're probably gonna have to make the season shorter. And you already have a marketing problem too, like you said, Sid. Who knows some of these guys? We know Mike Trout, we know some of the other Jose Altuve, some of the other guys, but do we know any other players? Baseball has done a really good job in the last 10 or 15 years marketing their stars. That's always been a problem. So I honestly don't know what can be done at this point. If you're baseball, you're gonna have to change your whole trajectory of everything. And I don't know. Well, what can be done? Are there any ideas? And we'll go through the numbers, Sid, because these numbers are like, it kind of makes you, some of the numbers make you want to scratch your head.
You're listening to Second City Sports. We're live in Olympico, the first show for the month of March on the hashtag Fun Friday, Friday Fun, whatever you want to call it, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. You're listening to Sports Zone Chicago. As we talk about the MLB lockout, how long do you think the MLB lockout is going to go? Will they get a deal done within a couple of weeks? So do you expect the season to start in May or June? Or do you think it's going to start in mid-April? We want to know your comments and questions. Just go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your answers in the comment section, Lakeena. We'll get them up on the screen for you. Lakeena, let's go to the marketing problem. We all know that baseball lacks of the fan base of which they're trying to market it to. I believe it's an older man's a game in terms of marketing to. They're trying to market it to young people. I know they got a few of the rules changed with we will have the universal DH coming, designated hitter. We already have the pitch clock. You don't have to do intentional walk anymore with 4 straight pitches. Just do one pitch out to the catcher, and they're on first base. And I know they're trying to install the pitch clock, but there's more that has to be done.
Yeah. And also, too, does anybody know anybody? Can you name one person from the Seattle Mariners that got a really good young team, but can you name like 5 players from there? You can't. Outside of Mike Trout, can you name, and Ohtani, can you name anybody from the Angels?
No.
Nope, you can't do that either. So this is a big marketing problem, and this has been going on for years now with baseball. And it could be, it could be the owners. Yes, it could be the owners of those teams. Maybe they can do it better. But the baseball as a whole needs to do a better job of marketing their players. I mean, who the White Sox, players are. You can name 5 guys from the White Sox, or at least 3. And in Atlanta, you probably name a couple. Freddie Freeman. Oh, well, he might not be a Brave. Once all that's done, we'll get to all that in due time. But it's sort of one of those things where, unless you're really like a die-hard baseball fan, you don't know some of the top tier guys. And also too, I think the median age of a baseball fan, I think they said they did. I don't know if they did for this past season, but I know a couple of seasons back, with the shortened season, it was like 58 or 59. You're not seeing a lot of folks in their 20s and younger watching, sitting there watching baseball games, whether it's through live, at the stadium, or on their phone or on their computer or whatever device. So they're not streaming it. They're not even streaming it. So that's a big problem for baseball. And you wonder though that they're going to have to maybe hire some younger marketing folks to kind of try to tap into that market. Maybe do what the NHL is doing, getting influencers to go to these games, and that can perhaps. Maybe if they get access to players, with the restrictions starting to lift a little bit, maybe get one of them to kind of interview some of your top guys. You need to do something. You need to kind of change the way they market it, because if not, and we've been saying this for the last couple of months, they're going to be an afterthought. So baseball needs to kind of get together with everything, the scheduling, their marketing, and just about everything else in between.
Let's go back to the schedule. I said this on the show a couple of times before, and this was my plan for years. And you remember they started in late April in 1995, coming off the 94 strike, and they had a 100-game season. And, of course, they had the playoffs with the debut of the wild card. I like that schedule, Lakeena. And plus, you don't have to start the season as early as they do now in early March, where, like you mentioned, half the cities, including here in Chicago, are still dealing with the after effects of winter in early part of spring, when you still have sub temperatures of 30 degrees and 40 degrees with rain and possibly snow all the time. You start to remember back in the day, they started between April 8th and April 15th.
Yep.
And because I saw down the road that they were going to expand the playoffs, which they're getting ready to do at some point. And of course, if you take something away, especially now with more revenue streams coming and not just old school advertising products, how are you going to make that up if you chop up 18 games off the 162 game schedule? You add another round of playoffs, because right now, the way they're going, you're going to finish up on Thanksgiving. I love baseball just like you do, Lakeena. You really run into the heart of the college football season, even though it's the beginning of the NBA season, but you really running into the end of the college football season. And we know that the NFL kicks up on Thanksgiving because it's starting of the drive to the playoffs.
Yep.
You're not going to win there. You're just not. And I was listening to some show in New York on the fan.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking, and some of the older fans were calling into the show talking about, let's start the World Series games at 3:30 in the afternoon on Saturday. I get the idea,
Jeez.
but this is the name of the game: is advertising, advertising, advertising. The more people you get watching those games, especially at night, that's how this goes. The more money you get. These big networks understand that. I get where a couple of those calls were coming from, but we're not going to go back to those days anymore. And plus, if you had afternoon World Series games, especially whether it's during the week or the weekend, are you going to get the common folks to cut work early to go to those games? No, you won't.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem too. I've heard some of those calls too in some of these cities. Here in Chicago, of course. I heard in Texas, people saying the same thing. Older fans are saying that maybe they should go back to that. It's not going to happen.
You get the kids to watch. I get it, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and let's remember too. I mean, kids are still in school then. If you do it, if you talk about doing the World Series, having 3, 4, or 5 o'clock games, like it was back in the day, that's not going to happen. Yeah, I mean, they're not. It's not. They're not tuning in to watch 35 million people are not tuning in to watch the World Series anymore. That's with everything else. You got all these cable networks, you got all these streaming services now. Some of them even free. So I feel as though that people the direction needs to change, and the mindset needs to change. And I think the sooner baseball realizes that, hopefully maybe the owners and Robert Manfred can figure this out. But I don't know. I mean, will they? And can they do it before it's too late?
Special guest is joining us right now. Friend of the show. She's a Chicago sports reporter and host for WBEZ 91.9 FM here in Chicago, and she's our personal Chicago sports historian. I am talking about, of course, the lovely and talented Miss Cheryl Raye Stout. Cheryl, welcome back to the program. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fine. Fine. How's your day going?
Nice and smooth. Just taking it easy.
I wish we were taking it easy talking about baseball. Of course, now we would have been in the middle of spring training, counting down to original opening day, which was March 31st. Now that's been axed, of course, the MLBPA and then the owners are at a standoff. I know that both heads of those groups had a meeting yesterday in New York City for about 90 minutes. We don't know when they're going to meet again. Cheryl, kind of sort this all out for us. Right now, as me and Lakeena discussed before we brought you on here, as a fan, I'm angry and rightfully so. But we knew this was coming. But it looks like the owners got personal and teased us all earlier this week, and now we have no deal, and we don't know when we're going to see baseball. I don't think they're going to cancel the season. There's too much on the line, but it looks like it's going to be an ugly fight.
What was interesting was a report that came out with the last 24 hours is that there are 4 owners from Arizona, the Angels, the Reds, and the Tigers are the ones that held up the whole thing about the luxury tax. Think about it. Those teams, it's insane. And you would think it would be probably some of the other owners, the bigger billionaires, but no, it's these guys are holding it up for the other teams, which makes you suspect as if this could get changed, which means that there's infighting going on with the owners, and that's what's really coming out of this. The other thing is they're losing, the owners, and MLB is losing any support from fans because they don't know how to use social media, and the players and the union knows how to use social media, and they're getting message out. And then today they announced that they have a fund now for all the day workers that they're going to help support. So they're doing things. They know how to get in front of their story. And, there's all sorts of other things about this agreement that's not being reached is, players have lost money in the last 4 years. They have not made more money. So, the onus is on the owners and Rob Manfred, who really looks like a clown in all this. He really does.
I think a lot of people would agree on that.
Did you at that press conference? It's like he was kind of jovial about it, and I'm thinking, this is hard, meaty stuff, and you're kind of making light of it, and cavalierly, oh yeah, you're going to cancel the games. I truly believe that the owners intended on not having an April schedule.
Yeah.
Because they don't fill in their stadiums. because of the weather, usually in the cold weather spots where there's no dome. They don't fill their stadiums. They figure they could take that hit, but the players do not get one paycheck until the regular season starts.
Right.
And that's where they're really putting the screws to the players.
What are, like, besides that, what are kind of like the main like sticking points? Is it revenue? Is it, TV money? What's really like the other like main sticking points in this whole thing?
Well, the main sticking point is the luxury tax. That's the big one. The other is raising the minimum wage, especially for your pre-arbitration players. Those players have to wait 6 years in order to start making, being free agents or going to arbitration. So that's a long time. And a lot of players' longevity is not even 6 years, so they're not going to make that money. That's my point before about wages going down, because those players aren't there. Those are the two big things that's really holding it up. Now they've settled the other thing. When you were asking about revenue, they're going to make more money because the players have agreed to, and the owners, to 12 teams in the playoffs. The owners wanted 14. They were able to get 12. You get beyond that, then you're really watering down the playoffs like you do in the NHL. Sorry, the NHL has way too many teams in the playoffs. But with that said, they've got some smaller things, but that luxury tax is the real crux of the matter. And as I mentioned, when you have 4 owners steadfastly not wanting to change that, that's a big issue.
Cheryl Raye Stout, our Chicago sports historian. She's a Chicago sports reporter from WBEZ. Joining us here on Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports on Chicago. Sid and Lakeena here with you. Cheryl, let's stay on the revenue side of the owners for a moment. There was an article, we talked about this before we brought you on, courtesy of alphaannouncing.com, that these regional networks, of course, Chicago with Marquee Sports Network with the Cubs and NBC Sports Chicago with the White Sox, they're included in here as well. These regional sports networks will not ask for rebates until after game 25, because most of these teams are local networks are contracted to broadcast roughly between 140 to 145 games, because some games are on Fox and ESPN exclusively.
Right.
Talk to us about that, because if the owners don't want to play games in April, I think they're going to budge sooner rather than later, because there's less money from these networks that pay a lot of money to air those games. The owners are not going to get.
Yeah.
Right. And when you mentioned the 2 Chicago teams, Marquee hurts more than anybody, because that's all they really have. And it's really not very good programming besides the games. I mean, face facts. At least with NBC Chicago, they still have other teams. They're still, they've got their fingers crossed that the Bulls have, a nice long run, because not just the games, you can make money off of your local programming about those playoff games. And that's where they're hoping for it. The Blackhawks, that's a lost cause. Sorry, I know, Sid, you're a big hockey fan. but
We'll get to them later.
But those revenues are important, and that's why they're okay with losing April, but they don't want to go beyond April. That's their line of demarcation, is we don't want to lose any money with our local affiliates, because remember, Jerry Reinsdorf has ownership in NBC Chicago. And Ricketts, that is his baby with Marquee, so they don't want to lose money on that.
All right, let's line it up a little bit here. Let's go to the hardwood in the NBA with the Bulls. Unfortunately, the Bulls lost a tough one last night to Atlanta. They have their somewhat revenge game, against Milwaukee tonight. It's going to be ESPN. Yeah, big. Oh yeah, Tristan Thompson. Oh, well, we'll get to that in a second. But I know they've lost 3 in a row. So it's coming back from break. I know injuries and such. They're number 3, I should say, right now, behind Miami and Philly. Can the Bulls sort of keep it together, or will they fall a little bit further? What do you think?
I think right now they're kind of treading water a little bit. What may not realize that they have the second toughest schedule coming out of the break, and that really has come to roost for them. What they're hurting. What's the category they're hurting the most in? Is defense.
Yep.
And defense is something that there's 2 players that are sitting on the bench recovering from injuries. When they were playing, the Bulls were the top defensive team for a while. So you got to keep your fingers crossed that when Alex Caruso comes back and Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso is a factor, not just his defense, but his on-court presence helping the other players. And he's a vocal leader, and he knows how to run. So I think if they could get him back, and we're hearing him sometime maybe next week, he could come back. That's going to settle some things down. And that means that, Zach Levine, who's, having some issues with his knee still, and he will for the rest of the season, he needs to have some of those breathers so that Alex Caruso can help, help a defense and let him, take a back seat. But I do like some of the things. I do like Tristan Thompson being on this team. And tonight it's going to be very interesting to see how he handles Grayson Allen. But I like Billy Donovan's philosophy. And he's saying all the right things. And he will, because he's a coach. But he's saying, I wanted my team to go through adversity, because adversity is what's going to help them when they go into the playoffs, to understand these moments and be able to make the adjustments. And he's had to use his two young, kids in the backcourt. Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White has had more playing time than they were supposed to have at this point. And that's going to help them, again, into the postseason once those two players come back. The other issue is, will Patrick Williams be part of this, the end of the season in the playoffs? He's been getting more and more basketball activities. And I think tell him he doesn't have to score. Just defend the basket. Just be in the post. Help out, Nikola Vukovic. If he could do that, he could be a factor in the postseason.
Let's talk about DeMar DeRozan. He's having a career year. Of course, he's been a multi all-star, of course, with his years with Toronto. And, of course, we know what he did with San Antonio the last couple of years. Not so much locally, but nationally, people trash the Bulls front office for making a deal to bring over DeRozan. Like I said, he's having an MVP-type season. I know when you get into your early 30s and you start to trend downwards coming out of your prime. Talk to us about DeRozan's season, and where do you have him ranked as far as winning MVP?
I think I think DeMar, who's having, this is what a great story he is. He really is a great story. And he played in Toronto, which, I know the NBA, everybody, knows the players and teams and everything, but really when you have some of these markets like Toronto, you don't really have the national spotlight on them. And then when he got traded to San Antonio, that's when San Antonio has been in their, their retooling, and he never had the spotlight then. But the coolest thing was when we got to talk to Popovich when he was in town recently, and he talked about, he took the time that he had with DeMar to develop more of his game and give him more of the confidence. And DeMar has talked about that too. And when a player in his 13th year has been able to apply the lessons he's learned from his previous stops and apply it and have a mid-range game that seems to be lost because everyone wants to shoot the threes. And he's so smart about his spacing. He knows how to fool the defenders. When you have that ability, it makes everything else work, and he makes it look effortless. He's very calm about what he does. And I know he gets riled up with the officials, which is always interesting. But when you really watch his game, just his game, I really like the way he approaches it. And so with the way he plays, and the fact is, what he's done in that run when he had the 30 plus points and the 35 plus points plus 50% field goal shooting, that was because he is playing the game that works for him and not trying to play the game everybody wants to play in the NBA is shooting, beyond the arc. So I just like his game. I like his demeanor, and I like his connection with some of the young players. He's taken Ayo Dosunmu under his belt. He's taken him and said, you know what, this is how to do things. And Ayo Dosunmu, to me, I'm just loving his growth, his maturity, how he's handling it. And when you have a veteran that's willing to do that, they're gold. Because too many players are into like themselves or but he's invested in his teammates, and that says a lot about him, and says a lot about the fact that this team, they get along really well. You can feel it when you're around them. Fortunately, now with the COVID situation getting better, I'm actually able to talk to these players, one-on-one, so I get a better handle on them. And so you look at what he's done and you look at what he can do. I think right now he may be getting a little tired. The back-to-back games are going to be kind of rough on him. So I don't know, because the schedule is way so tough that I don't know if he's ever going to get a rest, but he really should get a rest in the next couple weeks. Somehow Billy's got to find a way to kind of like reduce his minutes.
Yeah, I think he might. I think he might do that. You actually answered my question about Io because he's been very impressive. He had 15 last night. Trae Young unfortunately got his revenge in a little bit. He hit a couple big shots over him, but yeah, but like you said, with DeMario taking him under his wing and kind of you can see that sort of the he's kind of being molded. And what do you think is the ceiling for Io?
I think Io, we don't know yet. I think there's a lot that, because you know what, he's very coachable. I know that's thrown around a lot, but you really could see it because Billy Donovan sits down with him after a game and goes over, things that he has to take care of, taking care of the ball, or maybe where he should be in a particular scheme. And then the next game he applies it. That doesn't happen with a lot of players, when you're that young. I really like the fact that he was in college for 3 years. That says an awful lot about him being able to process, not just the game, but the maturity. When I was 18 and 19 years old, I couldn't handle the stuff these guys handle in the NBA, coming out of college after 1 year and playing. So when you've got a kid that's already got that maturity factor there and is willing to grow even more. And like I said, with Lonzo Ball being out, this was his opportunity. He was the 30th pick in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be able to talk to every general manager that passed him up and asked him why you didn't even think about taking this kid, unless you had a point guard that was already, there. But and he was considered a backup. But I think COVID helped in that way because a lot of scouts were not at games. So being in Illinois, and the fact is the Bulls were able to see him more, probably helped them and realize, oh, this kid's a real deal, and also be able to vet him through, his family and stuff like that. So they were able to take advantage of the pandemic in order to, pick a player that they probably knew better than most teams did.
One more question about the Bulls before we move on, Cheryl. Of course, you mentioned Billy Donovan, and of course, we saw the attitude of this team last year. Even though they missed the play-in tournament due to Zach LaVine, part of it was because he missed some games due to COVID last year. Of course, we've seen the turnaround this year with better talent. But through the injuries, through COVID, and through this tough schedule, what grade would you give Coach Donovan as of right now?
I give him like an A-, because I think his game preparation. I think sometimes I look at some of the players he may have on the floor once in a while that I question, but overall, they're prepared. They have a plan. He looks at the matchups. He's got like last night we saw him have Tristan Thompson on the court at the same time as Vukovic, which is going to be interesting if he starts using that further on, especially when you play bigger teams. I want to see that when they play Philadelphia. And Brooklyn, those two teams, I want to see him and do that. But he's very measured, but it's not phony. You know what I mean? You see those coaches, they're full of crap. There's something about Billy. There's an authentic, genuine, and the players they say it back to us that he cares about them. And you just feel it, and they respond to it. Now, sometimes they may not have the talent level that other teams have, but it's not going to be because of the lack of effort. And they have to say, with him and his coaching staff, I would love to be able to listen in on Mo Cheeks talking to Io and Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso. I mean, wouldn't that be cool to be able to listen to that conversation between those guys? So he's got the right staff around him. I think AK's done a really good job. Remember during the COVID, problems that they were having in December. Imagine what the front office had to do, and their scouts had to do to try to find the players to fit in last second. And they did a pretty good job with that. It wasn't easy, but they did that. And Billy's been able. Okay, I got a guy out. He won't make players being injured be an excuse. It just means that other players get more opportunity and have a better chance of being in the game. So I've liked a lot of what he's done. There's very little areas where I go, but mostly I think he's done a positive job. And I think he's going to get some votes for Coach of the Year.
Let's go to the gridiron here. Yeah, he should. I think he will. Let's talk about the Bears for a second. A totally new regime. Ryan Poles, new GM, Matt Eberflus, a new head coach, got a whole new coaching staff. We got mostly from his days in Indianapolis, Coach Eberflus. What do you think? What do you think the Bears have to do to kind of like get back into like being that contending team that people were expecting, the last few years?
Well, I think when he starts really, delving into his roster, he's looking at it going, oh boy, I got some real issues. Ryan Poles said down at the combine on Monday that they have to change their offensive line to be way less quicker. And if you look at the Bears' offensive line as it is right now, do you see anybody that fits that?
No.
I don't know.
No, ma'am.
and that's his position. That's what he played, so he knows that really well. But with Matt, it's really terrific that Indianapolis allowed Matt Eberflus to bring his defensive coaches with him, because Matt Nagy was denied any of his coaches from Kansas City. And so you have one part of the team, the defense, that's already in place. The wild card is going to be, how does Luke Getsy, how does he handle the offense? What does he do with Justin Fields? And when Ryan Poles, the one player he was interested in because he's really is Mooney, Darnell Mooney. I'm going, yeah, but there's a whole lot of other receivers you got to get on this team.
Mm-hmm.
They need more receivers. They need more playmakers. What do you do with Allen Robinson? Does he definitely go away? And I think he probably will. So you have that, but he also has to address what players is he going to shed? Where is he going to, what money does he say, okay, we got to cut this person off? Don't be surprised if they, we're going to see Akeem Hicks probably gone. I think they're going to try to see what they can do with Khalil Mack. Remember, he didn't play a lot of games last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes a lot of money.
Right.
Can he restructure his contract? If they can restructure his contract, that may help them. They also have to address, there's so many areas of need that they have. And so Ryan Poles has got a tough job. He only has 5 draft picks, 5, and no first rounder. That really hurts you. So and the thing is, when you come into a job like he did at the point he does, he doesn't have a whole new scouting staff. He has Ryan Pace's scouting staff. So hopefully they're going to be on the same page when they make decisions, when they're down at the combines, when they start preparing for the draft. And I think the important area is the undrafted players. They have to find the right ones that fits what Matt Eberflus wants and what this team needs. And that's going to be an area that they have to look at.
You mentioned, and that was going to be my next question to you, Cheryl, about not having as many picks because they don't have a first rounder this year because of the Ryan Pace did train into the Giants for acquiring Justin Fields last year. And I meant to bring this up on our show, Lakeena, on Monday, but I'll bring it up here. And Cheryl, you'll be the first person that I'll ask this to. Darnell Mooney is very good. He's the only playmaker you have at the right receiver position right now. Of course, David Montgomery, I think, is the best offensive player at the running back position. Would you try and at least entertain the offer of trading Darnell Mooney? You probably won't get what you want, but this team needs more picks.
No, I think he's a player that works well with Justin Fields, and Justin Fields needs a little bit of a cushion there, and I think, David Montgomery also, he's in the year they have to pick up his contract or not pick it up, and that's going to be interesting. I don't think they will, because I think Herbert is going to be the guy that's going to get some snaps in his place. I don't know who they can trade to make that work, but there's got to be somebody on that roster. You go, you know what? I think we could make some deals for some of these guys, and I think they have to look at their tight end situation and see if Cole Kmet can forge a little bit more playing time. We don't know how good some of these plays are or are not because of the way it worked last year and the year before. I mean, Matt Nagy's system didn't work, and so. Is it because it was so bad, the schemes, or was it because the talent isn't there? And that's what's really hard, Sid, is not knowing who's good and who's not.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though. This coaching staff, I'm sure they finished up looking at the tape in every game from this past season. And I'm sure they had about 2 or 3 garbage cans thrown over watching that offensive good grief. So I'm sure they had a lot of cleaning up to do in those offices at Hallis. So before I give it back to Lakeena, I wanted to ask you, since their first pick will be the second round pick, which position you think they'll go after with that second round pick? Offensive lineman, wide receiver, or will they pick up? Me personally, I still think they need another defensive end, especially since they're going back to the 4-3.
4-3, yeah.
What would you do with that second round pick?
Did we lose Cheryl? Did we lose her?
Oh, I thought you wanted to keep.
Oh, no, that was
No, I was asking you the question. What would you do with that second
Cheryl.
round pick? Would you go offensive line, wide receiver?
Well, if you have a top offensive line, that's where you go. You have to, because when anybody, no matter who it is, when they mention something more than one time, more than 2 times, more than 3 times, you can kind of figure out that's where they're going after. That's what they're targeting. And so I think he's targeting offensive line. But I don't know the draft prospects right now. And I think it's an incumbent to put that out there. But what he has to figure out, he cannot just take the best player. He's got to take the best player at that position is what he's got to do. And I think that's probably where he's going to lean. This is supposed to be a good draft. The one thing I understood, this is supposed to be a good draft for receivers. So he could probably get receivers further down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a nice lot of depth there. What about Khalil Mack? I know you said that maybe restructuring his contract. I've heard some people say maybe trade him to probably get those extra picks. You think that's a possibility?
It could be. I think it could be. But when you look at his, I love that guy. I mean, I absolutely love him. But how often he wasn't on the field the last couple of years too, that has to be factored in there, because once a player starts having lack of time on the field because of injuries, it's not like they have an instant, all of a sudden their body, regenerates and they become, Superman again. It's very hard. So I'm very concerned about that because of these type of injuries he's had. But because I don't think next year is going to be a year where you're going to think they're going to be very, very successful. You got to put it, if they play above 500, that would be fantastic. If they are under 500, that should be expected, because they just don't have the team right now. And it's going to take an awful lot. I mean, they're going to be scouring the wires and everything to try to, fill some needs. And they may not be able to do it right away. Again, going back to having lack of draft picks, and the thing is, Ryan Poles says he wants to build the roster through the draft. Well, the only way you're going to get draft picks is making a trade. And I think Khalil Mack could be a trade player that could be tradable.
Heading down the home stretch with Chicago sports reporter Cheryl Raye Stout of WBEZ-FM right here on the Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid and Lakeena here with you. Cheryl, let's get to the Blackhawks. Of course, last night they honored Nicholas Hjalmarsson, the 3-time Stanley Cup champ, before the game last night against Edmonton. Of course, Duncan Keith made his return to the United Center. Of course, the last time we had you on, we discussed the whole Kyle Beach situation. We won't rehash that again, but this team, I know Kyle Davidson is now the official new general manager, but this team keeps stepping on its own toes with a couple of bad PR hits. Of course, Riker Words disrespecting Philip Thompson from the Tribune, Mark Lazarus of the Athletic during that town hall meeting. Of course, the article that Scott Powers of the Athletic put out last week regarding Pat Foley's last season behind the mic. Of course, now they're trying to reduce John Weideman's role, the radio voice of the Blackhawks, next season. What do you think about all this? Because right now, I'm a fan, but I'm giving I know that this new leadership role with the Blackhawks organization. Of course, with any organization, with any job, you bring in new people. They want to bring in their own new set of eyes. But I'm kind of giving the Blackhawks organization a side eye right now. It does not look good.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas it doesn't look good. I will say, a lot of it is pretty glaring. But I will say that Kyle Davidson is pretty impressive when you get to meet him and talk to him. And a lot of things that wasn't revealed in that press conference probably should have been talked about. What he's done, the changes he made because of the Kyle Beach situation, that they have 2 psychologists in the locker room every day for the staff and for the players. If they need to talk to them, that they had set up a hotline and an email that people could send messages if they have a problem, so they could do it anonymously. So they've done this, and he wants to do something to help the youth hockey, this is where the problem really has been very pervasive, is in the youth hockey. Mm-hmm. So those are things they should have made more public than they have, but that's what they've done. So I give him credit for that. And I also give him credit because he said that they're going to have a rebuild, not a retool, because that's what they've done the last several years is retool, and they never did the right things. That's where Stan Bowman failed miserably, is not really getting the right parts. So with that said, I think the front office is going to be okay on the hockey operation side. Business side, they can't get away from themselves getting into trouble with what they do. What they've done to Pat Foley is incredible. What they are now doing to John Weiderman is incredible. And the problem is when you bring in somebody from the outside, from Dallas, to come in here and say, I'm going to take care of, I'm going to make all these changes. And you have this revolving broadcast crew. And I have nothing against them, but it's hard when you don't have the knowledge of the team. It just doesn't come off very well. They made their broadcasters in radio take pay cuts before the season started. And then they told them they wanted them to do social media while they were announcing. I mean, there's some people that are very good at that. Jason Benetti's very, very good at that. Chuck Swirsky does a pretty good job with that.
Yes.
But hockey, you can't, that's a continuous sport. There are very few breaks. It's a constantly moving sport. And so they failed with that. And a very, very credible source, very credible, told me that Pat Foley had no intentions of retiring. That was not what he wanted to do. And yet they kind of, what's the phrase, putting lipstick on a pig?
Yeah.
When they said, yeah, he's in agreement. Don't believe it. He does not want to retire. But now, he's got to be gracious about it. You're not going to hear him coming from him. But the fact is, he should still be in that booth. He should still be and leave when you're a Hall of Famer. You should be able to leave when you want to leave, because he has not lost one iota of how he broadcasts a hockey game. Not one. And John Weiderman, if you're going to do that, John Weiderman, they're not going to let him go on TV. The thing is, when you do radio, because you don't have the video, you do have to have much more explanation going on. And so right. He's good enough where he can make the adjustment. And also that, where's most of your audience going to be for any sport? I love radio. I've done radio my whole life. But still, television is the sport, because hockey was always a bad television sport. It's now one of the better sports to watch on TV. And so if you have the voice who's got the background, who understands the team, that knows what's going on, and have him in that booth, that will help the transition, especially when you're going through a rebuild. You're going to have, let's just, bomb everything and get rid of, that's what they're doing by this type of tenor. I'm just totally aghast what they're doing with that.
Last question for me, Miss Cheryl. The college hoops, we got March Madness starts in a couple of weeks. You got Illinois. If they look like they were really good, they had to, pull one out against, Penn State, but it looks like they're going to get a share of the Big Ten title, at least with Wisconsin. Can this Illini team go far in the tournament?
We all thought last year that they were going to be in the Final Four, right?
Right.
Thanks, Porter Moser.
I don't know. They have a lot of good parts. I mean, when you have a Kofi Coburn that can do what he does,
exactly,
and you've got Trent Frazier, you have all these possibilities. They should be, and maybe going through this, their conference tournament. When you have the rough and tumble maybe that will help them propel them into. But I want to bring up one person that I really want. I would want everybody to watch, and she's going to be playing tomorrow for DePaul. Anissa Morrow. She is incredible.
Yes.
She is the first time in DePaul's history who's going to win Freshman of the Year, Naismith Freshman of the Year. She's also up for the regular Naismith Award. She's also up for Defensive Player of the Year. The last time DePaul had a freshman that had this type of cachet is Mark Aguirre in 1979.
Yep.
She is the real deal, and nobody scouted her. None of the big teams scouted her. She stayed at home from Simeon. I'm sorry to divest from the Illinois.
No. I've heard of her. She's terrific.
I'm so excited for her and what she's done, averaging 28 points and 17 rebounds a game. I mean, Illinois wish they had her on the men's team.
Shout out to Doug Bruno.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Doug, he gets. They're not having a great season because they've had some hiccups along the way. But she's the real deal, and she's playing tomorrow against Marquette. And I just love when you have somebody that people disregarded when she was available to be, given a scholarship, and she stays at home, and she's just doing what she's doing. And the Big East is no slouch to be able to do that in.
Especially now with UConn back. Yeah. So
yeah, and they've had the trouble with UConn, but I that story, Illinois is going to be. I think Illinois is going to be a good story. I think Loyola's got to make some noise in the MVC for their last time in the MVC because they're leaving after this year. So there's a lot of college basketball is going to be a lot of fun because they have all the stands are going to be filled with fans. And there's nothing better than having the fans in the stands to be able to cheer and having the band going crazy and the cheerleaders falling and making mistakes. Sorry.
Yeah, with baseball being out of the picture for the foreseeable future, March Madness has the Sports Center stage, and it's going to be great. So we're definitely looking forward to that. Miss Cheryl Raye Stout, Chicago 8 sports reporter and our personal Chicago sports historian, join us here on Second City Sports right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid and Lakeena here with you. Cheryl, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. It's always a pleasure. Delight to have you join our program and bring us a reporter's insight, a perspective that no one else brings. So thank you very much once again for joining our show today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys. You guys are great.
Thank you.
Shucks. Thank you. You stay safe. Shucks. Stop. You're great too, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl, for joining us. So we look forward to having you on again down the road.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
You too. All right, that's Cheryl Raye Stout. You can listen to her on WBEZ. Now, Sid, it's always fun when we have her on, but I gotta stretch for a second. You gotta take our 2 and 2. We're way past our 2 and 2 break, but coming up next, we're gonna talk, Bulls, NBA. I know Tristan Thompson already said he's gonna take one for the team. We'll talk more about that in their big game against the Bucks tonight. Also, too, college hoops. Some of the big tournaments are finishing up their regular season. You got some smaller conferences getting ready for their tournaments as well. Also, to our girl, Christine Manika from KXRB in Sioux Falls is making her return with us. So a lot to do still here on hour 2, but, we're going to get right to it. After this break for Sid, I'm Lakeena. This is Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you in a bit.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
DeRozan, foul line left. Count it! Foul! DeMar DeRozan with the hoop, the harm, and one.
Bulls radio with the call. 112-108 the win over the Hawks last night. Chicago at 39-21 with the win. DeMar DeRozan, 37 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Nikola Vukovic with a double-double. Nice night for Zach LaVine with 20 points. The Bulls host the Grizzlies tomorrow night. Chicago on top of the Eastern Conference by a half game over the Heat. Wins in 7 of 10 and 6 in a row. The Blackhawks are winless in 3. They're back at it tonight hosting the Devils. Chicago's last game was Sunday, a 5-2 home loss against Florida. College hoops last night, number 22 Ohio State with an 86-83 win at number 15 Illinois. The Illini are 12-5, second in the Big Ten, chasing Wisconsin and Purdue. They're both 13-4. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Welcome to Allstate, where you can save just by being you. DriveWise in the Allstate mobile app gives you personalized driving feedback, and by adding it to your policy, you can save for driving safe just by being yourself. Allstate. Here, better protection costs a whole lot less. You're in good hands with Allstate. Click, call, or visit allstate.com to save today.
Not available in every state. Savings based on DriveWise and other safe driving discounts. Savings vary. Subject to terms and conditions. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Got a party of 10 coming in, and we need to flip those 2 tables.
Leah's restaurant is fully booked night after night.
Section 3 is still behind.
She no longer has reservations about finally finding a hostess.
Why doesn't 23 have menus? Oh, because they're in my hand.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports, the Friday edition, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in living color along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You have a question or comment for us during our now less than 60 minutes of this Friday extravaganza. You can go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in your questions or comments in the comment section. Lakeena will get them up on the screen for you. Again, let's pick up on the momentum from the last question you asked Cheryl Raye Stout, our guest from last hour, about college basketball. Of course, the Illini are 21-8 after a 60-55 win over the Penn State Nittany Lions last night down in Champaign. Of course, Illinois will wrap up their season on Sunday afternoon against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Lakeena, as I said, Illinois should have 21. They have 21 wins now, but they should have 22 wins by this time next week when they play in the Big Ten tournament down in Indianapolis. It was a struggle for the Illini last night. Kofi Cockburn only had 11 points and 6 rebounds, no fouls, but the Illini toughed it out last night, and it looks like they get it into primetime form.
Yeah, and I think that was a little bit worrisome because Penn State hung around a little longer to my liking. But look, I mean, the talent is not there at Penn State right now, and Illinois has it has more talent, and it's sort of one of those things where you're like, okay, they're gonna keep into gear, and that's what they did. So DeMonte Williams had 14 points, including some big rebounds to help Illinois propel them to that win over Penn State. And if they win against Iowa, they can clinch at least a share of the Big Ten title with Wisconsin. We'll get to them in a second. And and look, like Cheryl said, I mean, it's hard to kind of predict the Illinois because they could have a chance of perhaps making a big run, or we're going to see what happened last year that we all thought that they were going to go to the Final Four last year, and Porter Moser, Lucas Williamson, and Kaylin Clusters, said, you know what, not so fast. So said not so fast. So unfortunately that didn't help there. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, it's going to be depend on what region they're in. Chicago is going to be hosting the regionals this year, so it'll be interesting to see. We'll just see if I'm sure Illinois is probably going to end up going to that region, but we'll just see what they do. I mean, like I said, it's all going to be about matchups at this point. And look, where things have in the Big Ten tournament too, so we'll see if they can kind of keep from the upset-minded folks, especially the ones that are going to be on the boat, like a Michigan State or Michigan and those type of teams. So we'll just see what they do.
Going back to last night's game, Jacob Granderson and my guy Alfonso Plummer, they only combined for 13 points. That production has to improve, and I think it will once we get into the conference tournament. Of course, the big dance. My guy Alfonso Plummer, he had a big game at Michigan last Sunday afternoon. I know he struggled last night, but I expect him to pick it up. Jacob Granderson is going to be another key player that needs to help out Kofi Cockburn and Trent Frazier. Now, Frazier and Cockburn, I believe, will be fine. Those two set up the tempo for the offense for the Illini, but Jacob Granderson and Alfonso Plummer will be my two players that I'm looking forward to watching this Big Ten tournament next week. Of course, as we get into the big dance the following week. But also, pay attention to Coleman Hawkins, the backup center. He's been getting a lot of run these last couple of weeks. I know he had 6 points and two rebounds in 12 minutes of action last night, but he's going to be a key guy coming off the bench for the Illini as far as bringing in that intensity defensively for the Illini, patrolling the paint. He's their version of Tristan Thompson for this Illini team.
It'll be interesting to see what he does, because he can't be that guy that sort of can kind of come in and perhaps be that big guy up front, screening guys and such. So I really like his game. Now he like he said, he has done it consistently, so he's going to have to do that more, especially if Illinois wants to make a deep run in the tournament. So we'll see what happens there. One of those, another thing, Wisconsin, bank shots, got them, in that win against Purdue. It's sort of one of those things where you're kind of like, I know some people want to invest in Wisconsin, perhaps maybe be like one of those picks to go to the Final Four, perhaps win the whole thing. I would be slow down on that. I mean, look, I know they got Johnny Davis and some of the other guys on there, but to me they depend on the three a little bit too much. And we've seen it. We saw it in that first meeting against Rutgers where their 3-pointers weren't not hitting their threes. So if you get that Wisconsin team that doesn't hit their threes, it's going to be big trouble. So I kind of feel like this is going to be sort of like the Achilles heel for them. But again, once we get to the Big Ten tournament, we'll see, the matchups and such, go into the big dance. We'll see if Wisconsin can, make that run, because they were picked to finish like in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. So the fact that they ended up winning at least a share of the title, I think, doesn't more of extraordinary, but, I would say people should slow down on, buying their stock to perhaps go all the way.
I know people are worried about Purdue. I know they stumbled here over the last few days, but I still believe they'll be fine. I still have them as a top 5 team to perhaps win it all. And that good teams go through this kind of stretch. I know it's a bad timing for them to go through it, but I think Purdue will still be fine. Another team I'll be worried about is Michigan State. They lost by 11 at Columbus last night against Ohio State. I told you guys Ohio State could be a surprise team in the tournament. I'm not picking them to win it all, anything like that, but not to me. People had Ohio State doing what they're doing right now. It was a big win for the Buckeyes last night on their home court.
Yeah, it was. I think they needed that. They really needed that win Ohio State did, because they lost earlier this week to the to Nebraska of all team, and to Maryland as well. So they really needed to win to kind of get back on track, and they did just that. They pretty much dominated Michigan State. So I think, look, they got a chance to perhaps maybe going far. I know EJ Liddell, of course, who he is. Malachi Branham, who is who can his front court mate can be right there, sort of would be that backcourt. So I think Ohio State does have a shot to perhaps maybe make a deep run as well. So it all could depend on matchups and such, and I really feel like that's going to be the case there. Kansas avenged from a loss a couple days ago against TCU. They had to hang on a little bit, but they did just that at home by 4. Kansas, they're gonna. It looks like as long as they win tomorrow, we'll get to their schedule in a second, but they can perhaps win their 16th Big 12 regular season title under Bill Self. So that's a pretty big accomplishment there. Should they do that? Houston, they dominated Temple. So they, no worries there. Arizona looks like they're going to wrap up number 1 seed in the Big 12 by beating Stanford. So, we're kind of getting down to the wire. Here are some of these, big conferences. Smaller conferences, we'll get to them in a second. They're already doing their tournament thing. So, yeah. So at least so far, what else caught your eye on college hoops this week, Sid?
Yeah, just that Wisconsin Purdue game. That was a classic game to watch. And you mentioned Wisconsin making some surprising heads turn this year. Duke and Coach Krzyzewski, of course, they beat Pittsburgh earlier this week. I want to see how this moment goes tomorrow. We'll get into the rest of the schedule coming up for this weekend in just a moment. But I want to see what the pageantry is going to be like, because it'll be Coach K's last game at Indoor Cameron Stadium against North Carolina. Will North Carolina, I'm not going to say play soft, but how are they going to handle this moment? Because all the pressure is going to be on Duke. As we mentioned, Hubert Davis, the first-year head coach, former NBA player at the Tar Heels. How they're going to play this, because they need this game more than Duke does, and all the pressure is going to be on Duke. How will Coach K handle this moment? Will the players? We all say it in sports all the time, whether it's collegiate or professional, your team, the players carry the attitude of their head coach. I want to see how Duke handles this moment.
Well, and also too, with Duke, they clinched at least to share the ACC, and if they win against
Mhm.
North Carolina tomorrow, they get it all by themselves. Would be the first time I think in like 11 or 12 years, since Duke has won the regular season ACC title, and it's sort of like there's going to be a big like pomp and circumstance. I know Jay Bills, who played for Coach K in the mid '80s, he's been posting a lot of photos or when he his playing days there with him and Johnny Dawkins.
I saw you. He posted a couple of letters on Twitter this morning.
Yeah, his early recruitment letter that he got from
Yeah.
Coach K. So he kept that and some of the pictures from back in the day when he had hair. He always makes jokes about that. But but I think it's gonna be he's gonna be calling the game, so I'm sure he's got to kind of keep it a very professional and such. But I'm sure it's gonna be like literally like a cast of thousands. There, a lot of foreign players. I think Christian Laettner is probably going to be there. I heard Grant Hill's like he's going to be there as well. Some of the other players from some of his championship teams, way back in the '80s. So there's going to be a whole lot of players there, and I'm sure there's going to be. I feel like this current Duke team is sort of expected to win. Like I said, North Carolina needs it more, like you said, because of the fact that they need it for bubble purposes. So it's going to be interesting to see how. I'm sure Hubert Davis will have his guys ready because there's going to be a lot of it's going to be a lot of pageantry and such, honoring. They're going to do a big little whole honors thing before the game. So I'm sure ESPN will carry that. So it's going to be like a whole lot of, thing. And what better way to do it against one of your rivals, North Carolina? So it should be very interesting tomorrow night. It's going to be very emotionally filled moment tomorrow night. So so look out, check out some Jay Bills' photos on his social media because they're a lot of some are pretty funny and such. Them going bowling, like you said that some of the recruitment layers that he got from Coach K. So, and look, people need to remember that, Coach K struggled his first couple of years there. And
yes,
when he got there, and I forgot who the AD was at the time, but he stuck with them. Nowadays that wouldn't be the case. So the fact that he stuck with him and that he built this, this power. Now again, Duke had actually won a couple of ACC tournament titles even before them when Bill Foster, may rest in peace, did it. Before Coach K got there, he went to the final, to the final game against Kentucky in '78. So they had a little bit of a history, but it wasn't until Coach K got there and was given the time to kind of build what he wanted to build. That's when Duke became the power that they are today.
You're listening to Second City Sports, the Friday edition. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid and Lakeena here with you, talking college hoops. Let's go back to one of our other local teams, and that's the Loyola Chicago Ramblers. They play later today against the Bradley Braves at 2:30 on ESPN Plus nationally and locally here on NBC Sports, locally on NBC Sports Chicago. Of course, the Missouri Valley Conference tournament is going on right now, along with the other smaller conference tournaments, which they'll continue through this weekend, wrapping up by Sunday. Lakeena, do you give the Ramblers much of a chance to make it to at least the title game on Sunday? I give them a shot. Will they win the whole thing? Part of me says no, but I think they'll get to the championship game on Sunday.
They need to win it all to make it to the tournament.
And we said this one over the last few weeks.
4 seed, I believe. Yeah, the 4. They need to do it there. The 4 seed, I believe they're going to play against Bradley. I know Bradley, played them pretty close in their second meeting, so I'm sure they would love to play spoiler for Loyola. But yeah, I think Drew Valentine's got his work cut out for, and the Ramblers got their work cut out for them because Northern Iowa and Illinois that they're playing right now as we speak. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, and I hope for theirs that they can at least get to the final but then again at that Missouri Valley Conference tournament where things happen, you have teams that come out of nowhere, so it'll be interesting to see what can they pull it out. We'll just have to wait and see. Another team that needs to kind of make sure that they get made the tournament. Murray State, number 22. They have a quarterfinal or semifinal game, I should say, against Southeast Missouri State. That's the first one at 7:00. I think if you're Murray State, you better win the tournaments because if you don't, there are going to be some other bubble teams that are not going to be having it. And if you're hopefully Murray State, the Racers are focused and they can get that automatic bid and they don't have to worry about having to sweat it out on Selection Sunday next Sunday. So we'll just see what happens with that. Southern Illinois can play spoiler too. They have Drake on ESPN Plus. That's the last game in that quarterfinals in Missouri Valley. So we'll see. Southern Illinois can play spoiler. Brian Hurler and his guys. So we'll see what happens there. Now going into Saturday's games, and this is sort of when the part of the season where you're seeing a lot of last games of the season from the bigger conferences. Arkansas and Tennessee. That's the first game up on ESPN at 11 a.m. That should be a lot of fun. Arkansas beat Tennessee in their first meeting, so I'm sure Tennessee is going to want their revenge. That started like their streak for Arkansas, so that should be a fun one tomorrow. Villanova can wrap up the Big East title. They had a big win against Providence a couple of days ago to kind of give them that shot. They got to win against Butler to so at least get a share of that title with Providence. They still got it's still in Providence's court. Alabama, I know that they lost. They lost a couple of days ago, but they got to go against LSU, and that's the first game of that triple header on CBS.
This is possibly a elimination game in terms of what other bubble teams do. But Alabama checks in with a 19-11 record. Of course, LSU is 20-10. This could be a possible elimination game. Whoever loses, they'll have to win that SEC tournament, which is not easy. So this is a big game for both teams.
LSU, I think, needs it more than Alabama. Like I said, Alabama, I think they're in regardless, but I think LSU probably needs this a little bit more. But again, we'll see. I mean, Miami, another one of those bubble teams. I know they went down a little bit. Congrats, Jim Larrañaga, who now has the most wins in the Miami men's hoops program. So congrats to him. He got that earlier this week. They played Syracuse. I think they need to keep winning to sort of make sure they get into the right there in the tournament field. Kentucky against Florida. Florida needs this more than Kentucky does. I feel like, although Kentucky, I'm sure they want to make a chance to have a shot at that one of the number one seeds. That's the second game of that CBS doubleheader, and Florida, they need this win a lot more. Another game at 1 o'clock on ESPN. You got Indiana and number 8 Purdue. Indiana really needs this. I know Purdue needs it for confidence purposes, if nothing else.
You just saw the words right out of my mouth.
A bad taste in that mouth for that Wisconsin loss. So they really need this. Both teams need this a lot for various reasons. So that's the 1 o'clock game on ESPN.
Continuing with the Saturday schedule in the top 25 at 3 o'clock on ESPN. Tomorrow we have number 21 Texas. They'll travel to Manhattan, Kansas to face the Kansas Jayhawks, who are ranked number 6 in the country. Texas at 21-9, Kansas at 24-6. At 4 o'clock tomorrow, number 2 Arizona will host University of Cal. Of course, Arizona should blow them out. DePaul will travel to UConn. UConn, the Huskies are ranked number 18 in the country. That's at 4 p.m. tomorrow on Fox. DePaul at 15-14. UConn's at 21-8. Interesting game here in the Big 12 at 5 p.m. on ESPN2. Tomorrow, number 3 Baylor, the defending national champs. Most people have forgotten that. They'll host Iowa State. Baylor at 25-5, Iowa State at 21-10. This is a big game for the Cyclones. They could really boost their resume with a big upset win on the road.
Definitely a big boost there. Of course, we talked about North Carolina and Duke. Remember the start. Note the start time, folks, at 5 o'clock on ESPN. Of course, the semifinals of the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament. That'll be on CBS Sports Network. Starting at 5 o'clock, of course, games are, teams are to be determined as they play. So we'll skip right over that. Ole Miss at Vanderbilt. No Vanderbilt, Jerry Stackhouse has his guys sort of, perhaps maybe playing spoiler for Ole Miss. They're on the bubble. So you really need this win. Georgetown, Xavier, Xavier has, fallen, pretty hard, and they really need this. They probably pretty much need to get to the semifinals at the very least of the Big East tournament next week to perhaps get a shots being on the bubble. Arizona State and Stanford, Arizona State hosting Stanford. Arizona State is in the bubble conversation, so they got to keep winning. So we'll see if they can keep it up. Let's see. USC and UCLA, they're fighting for the number 2 spot. USC got the best of them in the first meeting. Let's see if UCLA can get their revenge in the second meeting. That's at 9 o'clock on ESPN.
And wrap it up with the Sunday schedule. At 11 o'clock on CBS, we have number 14 Houston. The Cougars will travel to Memphis to take on the Tigers in FedEx Arena. Anthony Penny Hardaway has his guys rolling as of late over the last few weeks. Memphis checks in with an 18-9 record. Houston, of course, at 26-4. Lakeena, this is obviously a bigger game for Memphis, but I think that a few people are sleeping in on the Houston Cougars. They made deep runs in the tournaments over the last couple seasons. Could this really be their year, or will we see them just win the game and bow out early?
Well, they lost a couple of their leading scorers early on this season to injuries. So, but the fact that they've been able to play well and still be in the top 15, I think that's a credit to Kelvin Sampson and what he's built in that program. I'm sure they're going to want their revenge because remember Memphis beat them about a month ago in Houston, so I'm sure they would love to have a little payback and a little get back there. Penn State and Rutgers, they edged out the cardiac Scarlet Knights as we call them. They eked out a couple of victories early this year, but they only have 17 wins, so they really need this win to they probably got to get to like at least the semis, I think, of the Big Ten tournament if they want to have a shot. I know they're right there in the bubble right now, but they're on the wrong side of it, so we'll see if Ron Harper Jr. and the guys can perhaps keep winning. Michigan, Ohio.
Yeah, credit to
ahead.
the left side of my brain. Houston made it to the national semifinal last year.
Yes, they did. So yeah, they did. They made it to the Final Four. So they're capable of doing that. So, but we'll see if they can do it again this year. Michigan, Ohio State, on Fox. That's always fun when those two teams play each other. So that should be an interesting one there. Nebraska and Tennessee, Wisconsin. Actually, Nebraska's won 2 road games in a row, including against Ohio State. So
break up Fred Hoiberg's Cornhusker crew.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they're still trying to get themselves, kind of geared up for next year. So if you're Wisconsin, I would say don't look past Nebraska. So they're kind of been like a one person wrecking crew lately. So we'll see if Wisconsin can kind of not have that let down. Oh, excuse me. Tulane and SMU, I know, I think they lost to Houston a couple of days ago, so we'll see if they can kind of keep it up because they're right there on the bubble as well. You got the championship of the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament at 1 o'clock on CBS in St. Louis. So
Loyola will be there.
Yeah, let's hope so because they definitely need to do it. Maryland and Michigan State. Michigan State really needs this win. That's the third game of that doubleheader after the Missouri Valley Championship. Michigan State really needs this win, so I think if you're Tom Izzo, you better have your guys ready. Also saying the Big Ten, you got number 24 Iowa and number 20 Illinois. Last game of the regular season for those folks, 6:30 on FS1.
And that's your schedule in the top 25 of college basketball. As you're listening to Second City Sports, the Friday edition, live and in living color, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid and Lakeena here with you. Lakeena, talk to us about some of the other teams real quick in college basketball. Who you think they can make a surprise run in a big dance?
I think it will all depend on if you want to go kind of like outside of sort of like the big tournaments. I know some people said Vermont. I mean, I haven't seen Vermont much this year, so I don't know if they could perhaps maybe pull off an upset. I don't know, but there are a couple of other teams. I feel like I know New Mexico State. I know they've lost a couple in a row. New Mexico State has, but I don't know. I would think St. Bonaventure, should they make the tournament from the A10. Maybe they could perhaps make a run. Again, the A10 is pretty wonky, so I just don't know. Iona, remember they got Coach Pitino, Rick Pitino coaching there, and he already said that he's not going to Maryland. He wants to stay in Iona for the rest of his career. So if again they got to get into the tournament though, they got to win the MAAC, the MAC, not the MAC, but the MAAC. If they can, depending on who they play, but again, if they can win that, then we'll see what happens there. San Diego State, if they get in, maybe they could perhaps make a run. Maybe gives some folks some fits. We'll see. Murray State, again, they got to win. I think they're capable of perhaps maybe winning a game or two. Some other teams from some of the other conferences. I mean, it's sort of one of those things where you kind of want to Cleveland State, they can perhaps maybe pull off an upset. They got a senior latent team. So there are a lot of teams that are more than capable of being that Cinderella team. So, but yeah, it all has to come down to if they can win their conference tournaments.
All right, let's wrap up for our last break, and when we return, Christine Manika, our home girl from KXRB Radio in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, will join us for her bi-weekly sports commentary, including the baseball lockout, the Bulls and Bucks battle tonight on the 4-letter network at 6:30 p.m. And plus, we'll have a whole lot more fun. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. You're listening to the Friday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Throws it foul line left. Count it! Foul! DeMar Wilson with the hoop, the harm, and one.
Bulls radio with the call. 112-108 the win over the Hawks last night. Chicago at 39-21 with the win. DeMar DeRozan 37 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Nikola Vukovic with a double-double. Nice night for Zach LaVine with 20 points. The Bulls host the Grizzlies tomorrow night. Chicago on top of the Eastern Conference by a half game over the Heat. Wins in 7 of 10 and 6 in a row. The Blackhawks are winless in 3. They're back at it tonight hosting the Devils. Chicago's last game was Sunday, a 5-2 home loss against Florida. College hoops last night, number 22 Ohio State with an 86-83 win at number 15 Illinois. The Illini are 12-5, second in the Big Ten, chasing Wisconsin and Purdue. They're both 13-4. For lightning fast sports updates, download the Score app. It's free and one of the most popular sports apps in North America. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash on the Sports Zone Chicago.
Welcome to Allstate, where you can save just by being you. DriveWise in the Allstate mobile app gives you personalized driving feedback, and by adding it to your policy, you can save for driving safe just by being yourself. Allstate. Here, better protection costs a whole lot less. You're in good hands with Allstate. Click, call, or visit allstate.com to save today.
Not available in every state. Savings based on DriveWise and other safe driving discounts. Savings vary. Subject to terms and conditions. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Got a party of 10 coming in. We need to flip those 2 tables.
Leah's restaurant is fully booked night after night.
Section 3 is still behind.
She no longer has reservations about finally finding a hostess.
Why doesn't 23 have menus? Oh, because they're in my hand.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Second City Sports, the Friday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. To help us bring this show home for the week and for our first show in the new month of March, it's our homegirl from KXRB Radio in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the one and only Miss Christine, the Queen Manika. Good afternoon to you, Miss Christine.
Hi, guys. Good afternoon.
Yeah, it's nice to have you back. We'll have you on for our every other week for your sports commentary and other thoughts around the pop culture world if we ever get to it. But let's start off with the MLB Lockout. The Players Association and owners are at a standstill. The first week of games from March 31st through April 6th and 7th are canceled. As of right now, those games will not be made up. I'm a pessimist now. Christine, do you think that the regular season will start in April, or could this be carried out, lockout be carried out even longer?
I think because the players are starting to see, okay, we're not playing baseball now until April. And I think the reality of that is sitting in for a lot of them. So I think both sides do want to make a resolution. However, I just don't think the owners are necessarily cooperating as much as the players would hope that they would, if that makes sense.
Here's the thing that other people are not talking about. We talked about this with Cheryl Raye Stout, our guest from the first hour. These local TV networks have a lot invested in broadcasting these games, in particular the Cubs with the Marquee Sports Network and NBC Sports Chicago with the White Sox. But with the national networks re-upping with MLB, with ESPN, Fox, and Turner Sports, with these regional sports networks, they're going to ask for rebates after 25 games. I think the owners will budge to perhaps get these games in late April, because in a perfect world, they want to start the season in May and perhaps June, because all the kids are out of school and people are looking for something to do. Now with the restrictions being lifted, or with the pandemic with COVID, people want to get out and resume their normal lives, and the baseball still want to play games. I'm talking about off the field instead of playing games on the field. There's going to be a problem.
There's definitely going to be a problem. You know, I see the tension on social media when it comes to the players and with the owners. There's a lot of talk about it with it in our office, saying how they just are not coming up with the resolution. And this is probably the second longest lockout, I believe, since the 1990 something. Help me out.
95, 94 started.
94. So it's frustrating for the fans, because if anything, the players, they have their money and stuff like that, but you're hurting the fans. They want to see baseball. They want to be entertained. And, it's just a shame that it's not coming to any sort of a conclusion at the moment.
If you could, I don't want to put money down, but if you can bet on, when do you think we'll see baseball? Will it be by April next month? Do you think it'll be May or June?
I want to say at least, I'm going to say the beginning of April. I want to say the beginning of April, just because then all those players are going to want to have an itch. They have an itch to get back out on the field, to get back into the stadium with the fans, with their team. So I'm going to say baseball should come back by April, if I were a betting woman.
Another issue revolving around the game of baseball we talked about earlier in the show, Christine, is that me and Lakeena were trying to come up with ways to marketing the game of baseball, especially to younger fans in your age group, because it's still an old man's game in the 50s and above. If you have any ideas of how baseball should market into your group, help us out, because we tried. Not saying we didn't come up with any good ideas, but we're trying to help out Commissioner Rod Manfred and crew. How should they market the game of baseball to younger fans?
I think you have to get the big players in our faces. You have to give them big plays on TV, those commercials, to get someone excited about baseball, whether it's a perfect game from a couple of years ago, Mark Burley, whether you show something from that, or maybe it's a grand slam from the World Series. I don't know. Whatever you have to do, show a big moment in a commercial to say, hey, this is baseball and it's exciting. And it doesn't help when you show people and the fans, having a beer, having a hot dog, just having fun.
What about the TV aspect of it? Because we were talking about, Sid and I were talking about this earlier, perhaps, that we heard some older folks, older than us, believe it or not, say that, let's go back to the days where the World Series was like 3 or 5 o'clock, our time here in the Central Time Zone. And it's just, I just don't see it happening. Well, what do you think? What's like another thing that baseball can market?
I think that's a good way to put it. Maybe even having a shorter postseason. That way the games can go faster, and that way the World Series will be there faster. That's another way to do it. Just because baseball could be a little bit longer than most sports. Yeah, I would agree with you too, where you said, I'm losing my train of thought.
The pitch, the first pitch, have it a little earlier than.
Yes, I agree. That's what I was coming up with. I couldn't think of it. It's like, if the Super Bowl can be at a decent time, why not? Why not the World Series?
And what about the aspect of social media? Because we know that the NBA and especially on Twitter and Facebook has been taking it off like a rocket over the last a decade or so. And we saw glimpses of it in hockey, especially when the Blackhawks were winning those Stanley Cups. And the NFL, they kind of do it here and there, but baseball is way behind on social media. What would you do in terms of marketing the game to younger fans? Because especially people in your age group, they're on social media the most.
I like when the White Sox were winning, when they were going on their run, they did a really good job with their social media. I thought it was active. People were getting excited. They were retweeting fans. They were retweeting photos of the game, some moments and stuff like that. So I think if teams just do that in general, showcase what's going on at the ball game. Maybe it's some sort of a special event and you post it on Twitter and something like that. I know the White Sox, they encourage that all the time when you go into their stadium, saying, hey, tweet hashtag White Sox to get on the big screen, or just, something like that. So just if baseball does more initiatives like that, saying, hey, you retweet this and you can go see the game and whatnot, then I definitely think more engagement on social media would be beneficial for, people in my age group.
Yeah, particularly with players, you got guys like Eloy who have this great personality, who's young
Yeah.
and who's charismatic. Start promoting those guys. I mean, you got the older guys, like Mike Trout and Anthony Rizzo and such. People know who they are, but they don't know about guys like Eloy and some of the other younger players. So I think that's probably what they need to do more of. Get people know who like the big stars are. Let's get to the younger guys, so like the next generation. That's probably who you probably need to market.
Right. Get the up and comers that are going to be the future of baseball. Exactly.
Yeah, because as of right now, we talk about Eloy Jimenez, and you talk about the older guys like Trout and Rizzo and Bryce Harper. Hardcore baseball fans and sports fans like us, we know who they are. But if you put them down Lakeshore Drive or Michigan Avenue, majority of people don't know who they are because you don't see them in enough commercials or motion pictures or appearing in music videos of their favorite artists or and whatnot. So just like hockey, and we'll get to the Blackhawks in just a minute, Christine, but you put them in certain elements that draws but potential new fans in. Get it, you have to take care of your hardcore customers. We get it, but you got to branch out a little bit to see if you can get new fans.
Yeah, exactly, because that's going to continue baseball for the long haul.
Okay, let's lighten the mood up a little here because I'm getting kind of angry with all this baseball talk, and we don't have any baseball. We're not getting good enough for it right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the NBA, right? I mean, let's talk about the NBA for a second.
Yeah.
All right, the Bulls, have a big game tonight against Milwaukee. The revenge game, if you will, for what Grayson Allen did to Alex Caruso. Tristan Thompson, who I'm starting to love more and more, has already said he's going to take one for the team, and they really need the Bulls. Really need this game. What's your synopsis of this game tonight?
I saw a funny headline. It's like keeping up with Tristan, like when they were talking about the Bulls and stuff like that. And so far he has managed to stay out of the media, I'd say, for the most part, and just stick to playing the game. I see it on the court. I see it on bringing up social media. I see it on social media. His excitement that he is with this team, and that only shows to me that he believes that the team could go all the way. Otherwise, he wouldn't be joining the Bulls in the first place. But this game it's really important. I'm looking at the standings right now. The Bulls, they're only a game ahead of the Bucks right now. So this kind of determines that third and fourth place in the standings currently. The Bulls are 39 and 24. Bucks are 38 and 25. So this game can honestly determine the top three standings.
I know the Bulls are currently on a 3-game winning streak. They lost a close one at Atlanta last night. I wasn't too surprised by that. I know they're currently on a 3-game losing streak. Are you really starting to worry about this Bulls team? They're getting a couple of guys back, hopefully in the next week or two, in Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso. Are you really worried about this Bulls team right now? Because I know some folks on Bulls Twitter, as Lakeena would say, they are going bananas and overreacting. But are you overreacting, or are you just kind of what you expected?
No, I mean, this is definitely, I think the fans are overreacting just because this is the first time in a long time that this team has been as good as they are. And they're thinking, oh gosh, please don't mess this up for us. Like, for once, we're getting some good Bulls basketball, and we just don't want that to stop. I would say if they were lower, like maybe in the 7th or 8th seed spot, I'd be a little bit worried. But since they're, top 5, top 3, no, I wouldn't worry about where they're at right now. And every team, every athlete, I should say, has a down day, and they're only going to rise to the occasion from it. So, I think this game is going to be testimonial to that.
Absolutely. Philly's been looking really good. They won 4 in a row. We could have like a new big 3, if you will, in Philly. So what do you think? Can Philly overtake Miami for that number 1 spot in the East?
I think they could. It's really anyone's game right now, because what is it? Miami, they do have the number 1 seed right now, so they're going on a tear a little bit. It's really it's a trying time for a lot of teams in the NBA, just because the top players that are on the teams that they are now, they're not getting really anything out of it. I saw Russell Westbrook, he wants to get out of the Lakers by the end of the season. And, he went on the Lakers because LeBron probably told him this is going to be a great team. We're going to win another championship. And none of that is really happening. And, Russell Westbrook, let's be honest, he's not the player what he was a couple of years ago. So he wants to find a team that maybe he can help carry on instead of them having to rely on him, if that makes sense. But right now, Miami's hot. They got the young team. They have those players that are wanting to win. No one that you really see in the headlines nowadays, but that could be better for them in the long run because players get big heads if they're good. So, and I think they're staying pretty level-headed considering their past history with their big three not too long ago.
Speaking of the Miami Heat, they beat the Brooklyn Nets on the road last night. Of course, Kevin Durant returned to the lineup for the Brooklyn Nets, and until that mandate is lifted once and for all, Kyrie Irving will not be playing any games at home. And so you mentioned, Christine, Miami is on the roll right now. Going back to the Lakers, they lost again on national television last night to the Los Angeles Clippers. I think the Lakers still have a shot of making it to the play-in, but as far as making it to the big dance in the playoffs, I do not see that happening. And I'll ask you, Christine. I asked this question, Lakeena, on our last show. Assuming that the Lakers lose in the play-in game, and even they sneak into the playoffs, I don't see them being Golden State or Phoenix, especially when Phoenix gets Chris Paul back, hopefully for the playoffs. Who takes the fall here with the Lakers? Is their head coach Frank Vogel? And/or will it be their GM Rob Pelinka, who's at the hit with LeBron James? Have my fingers crossed for those of you listening on our replay on the podcast at War on Anchor.
I saw that LeBron said a quote saying it's sad, it's disappointing, it's embarrassing. That's what he said. It's embarrassing right now for them to be showcasing their team on a national television stage, and they are always getting upset or they're getting disappointed. It's just he seems very frustrated with the way that it's going. And for me, in this situation, it starts at the top. So you have to reevaluate the GM to see what direction he's thinking in, or maybe it's the coach. Maybe the coach just isn't responding or reacting to the way players expected him to react. It's not the same team. The team is never the same after a championship win. No matter how many spins you put on it, the team is never the same. It's always something different. There's always a new element involved. And with the Lakers, you got the guy, you got LeBron James, but if you have nobody backing him up or too many young kids, so to speak, you gotta find some support for LeBron instead of just putting it all on his shoulders. So for anyone who's blaming it on LeBron, he's the least to blame out of the situation. I think you gotta look more in the recruiting side of things, if anything.
Yeah, at least he's being himself, at 38. I mean, you gotta give him credit for that. I think it's easier to kind of like for folks to kind of hate on LeBron and such, but we don't do that here, Sid. No. I hope we don't do that. but I mean, look, I think Phoenix is really good still. I know Golden State has kind of had their struggles. I know they struggled again last night.
Jordan's definitely happier with the 76ers,
Oh, yeah.
The hamstring is just healed.
I'm healed. So, yeah, it's crazy. I'm about to say I'm healed. Well, speaking of, they got Philadelphia has that big game against Miami tomorrow night at 7. Now, I know ABC's probably hoping wish that they had that game instead of, Golden State and the Lakers, but that should be a lot of fun. Could this be a preview of the Eastern Conference Finals? Maybe. We'll see. Should be a fun one.
Yep. And let's continue with our schedule real quick before we move on to the Bears. Just a few games of importance in the NBA this weekend. We'll start off with tonight. Speaking of Philadelphia, they'll host the Cleveland Cavaliers at 6 o'clock Chicago time. Of course, you got the Bulls and the Bucks on ESPN at 6:30 tonight. Of course, locally, you can watch that game on NBC Sports Chicago if you don't want to hear the national bias of the Bucks and all the other foolishness. And also at 6:30, we have Toronto hosting Orlando. And, of course, wrapping up the ESPN doubleheader tonight, you have the struggling New York Knicks to take on the Phoenix Suns. Of course, I don't think Devin Booker will be back. He's in COVID protocol. And speaking of the Saturday slate, Lakeena, we have an early afternoon, actually a late afternoon game tomorrow. The resurging Dallas Mavericks will host the terrible Sacramento Kings. How are they still in the play-in tournament mathematically? I don't get it. We'll leave that alone, of course. We have Philadelphia and Miami, as Lakeena mentioned. The Saturday night game on ABC is, of course, Golden State at the Lakers. And Portland will take on Minnesota. Minnesota is still in the playoff chase in the Western Conference. Let's go over to Sunday's games. The ABC doubleheader. The first game on Sunday will be the Brooklyn Nets at the Boston Celtics. That should be a good one.
Should be a good
And
one.
followed
Yep.
by rematch of last year's NBA Finals, Phoenix at Milwaukee at 2:30 on Sunday.
Should be interesting to see if Devin Booker will be able to be cleared for that game. We'll just have to wait and see there. Toronto and Cleveland, two up-and-coming teams in the East. That's the first game of that ESPN doubleheader. And New York continues their West Coast road trip in that second half of that doubleheader against the Clippers at 9 o'clock. So that should be interesting one there as well. So
the Clippers are playing well because we saw what they did last night to Lakers. To Tyronn Lue, I'll give them credit for what they did last year. The Clippers finally giving on the hump and going to the Western Conference Finals before Kawhi Leonard suffered a torn ACL last year. Of course, they've been playing most of this year without Paul George. Could he return? We don't know. Kawhi Leonard perhaps won't play this year, but I'm giving head coach Toronto a whole lot of credit for what the Clippers are doing this year. They certainly look a whole lot better than the Lakers.
Oh yeah, I don't think anybody had that early this year. Yeah. All right, and those are your sets your schedule for this weekend in the NBA. Now, okay, so Christine, I've been wanting to ask you about this because it's sort of like some big media news sort of going around the pike here. Of course, Troy Aikman, although it's not official yet, but all signs are pointing to him perhaps going to ESPN to do their Monday Night Football. The rumors that maybe Greg Olsen will probably get promoted from number 2 spots. Also, too, Sean Payton, his name's being thrown around. Now, Amazon, they're kind of in a pickle now too because they wanted Aikman. They're not going to go. So now they're trying to go to Herbstreit. What do you think about all this, NFL, media carousel? Because it's sort of like a musical chairs kind of thing. What are your thoughts on this?
For one, I don't think Troy Aikman or even, Joe Buck, I don't think either of them want to leave Fox because they have the next Super Bowl. So I don't think they want to leave that opportunity behind. So they're not going to go unless, the money talks. I think promoting Greg Olsen, if that's the case, if Troy Aikman does go to ESPN, I think Greg deserves it. Greg is a very charismatic guy on the air. He was also a great player for the Bears back in the day. And, from what I know about him, he seems like an overall great guy. And he's very enthusiastic about the game. So I think that would be a pretty good transition. I think the question is who's going to be able to handle Joe Buck, to tame him.
Yeah, remember for you Bears fans, Greg Olsen did a couple of games last year as part of the Fox number 2 team with Kevin Burkhardt. They did the Bears Cleveland game, which was a disaster, of course. And they did the Olsen did the Bears Packers game from Soldier Field. He was only one of a few game announcers that kept his cool while watching that piss poor and bad Nagy offense the last couple of years.
He never swore. He never was swear. He was a real gentleman. So I don't know how he did it, but yeah. So what else do you think? How about maybe Herbie, perhaps maybe going to Amazon, do the Thursday night football games? It just with Al Michaels, maybe supposedly. So what do you think about all that craziness?
I think we can safely say too, for when it comes to the NBC broadcast, that Sunday night broadcast, that's going to be different. I think Chris Collinsworth could be still involved in some way. We all know Michelle Tavoya, she's not coming back. And Al Michaels,
Fox News loves her right now. Just saying.
And Al Michaels, I think. I hope that he stays with Chris Collinsworth for Sunday Night Football. But again, money talks, and if the money is in that direction, then he's going to go where that is.
Heading down the home stretch on Second City Sports, the Friday edition with our girl Christine Manika. I'm Sid. That's Lakeena. Real live and in living color, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Let's get to on the field matters. Christine, of course, NFL has lifted their COVID-19 protocols. Of course, the scouting combine is taking place as we speak from Indianapolis in the Lucas Oil Field Stadium. Of course, the Bears do not have a first-round pick this year. They have a second-round pick, I believe a couple of fourth-round picks, a fifth, and a sixth-round pick. What would you do with that second-round pick, Christine? Would you go offensive lineman, wide receiver, the best player available on the board? Where would you go with that second-round pick?
Gosh, that can I say all the above with all that? Sure, let's go pick everybody. I don't know. I can't really read Eberflus or polls yet. I can't really see where they're leaning towards, because you have
maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, maybe that's a good thing. So you have Eberflus, who is known to be a defensive guy, but our defense is pretty solid, I'd say, for the most part for the Bears. But then you saw what happened, with the offense this year, and it was painful at some points to watch that. It was painful to see an offensive line kind of crumble like that. I think what it's going to determine is with the current players and what they're willing to do for them. Is there going to be a salary cap? Are they going to let some of those good guys go to replace them with new blood? I don't know. Again, they've kind of left it all up in the air. But if I was in the position, I'd say go for a wide receiver, because that seems to be a position where we were struggling with a lot this year. I wouldn't say go for a running back, because for whatever reason, Chicago has always had great running backs. So that's not even in their mind. I would hope not anyway.
Well, trading some of those, top guys, maybe a Khalil Mack, maybe, dare I say a Darnell Mooney. I know that he and Justin Fields had a nice little rapport, those last few games
Robinson
of the season.
was even like, yeah, I'm willing to talk. Like, I want to talk.
Right. Yeah. So, we'll see. But if you want to trade, perhaps remember they only have 5 picks right now, so they may have to trade one of those guys to perhaps maybe get a couple of picks back. So do you see them? Do you see them doing that perhaps?
Unfortunately, and I do, just because it's the Bears. They're unpredictable. I wouldn't be surprised if they do tell Khalil Mack that this is it, and you're going to go to another team now. It would be a loss defensively, but I think the Bears would find a way to fill that mold, if that makes sense.
And as a reminder, the Bears are close to $30 million under the cap heading to the March 16th free agency season. You're listening to Second City Sports, live and in living color, the Friday edition right here on Sports Zone Chicago. We still have a couple of minutes left with our girl, Christine Manika, wrapping up the show for today and for this week. Christine, I was watching something in Lakeena. I was watching the Tape Never Lies Network. Hopefully we can get Dr. Phil Toshin on this program somewhere down the line. Of course, he's a Friday guest on Sean and Maya in the morning right here on Sports Zone Chicago. That's the Chicago Bears podcast. They do a great job. I was watching an interview that he did earlier this week with our girl Deion Miller from ABC7 Chicago, and they were talking about Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen, of course, injured his ACL early in 2020 against Atlanta. Of course, he didn't play this past season. Technically, he's still on the roster, and of course, Ryan Poles was asked about Tariq Cohen the other day, and he said, we're not going to talk about that. And of course, Phil Toshin showed the tape of Tariq Cohen dancing coming off the field in the regular season finale at Minnesota. So something's not right between Tariq and Bears and the new Bears brass. I want to ask you, Christine, and Lakeena second. Do you see Tariq Cohen being part of the Bears' plans going forward? Me personally, I don't.
I do, because he brings that energy to the team. I really think he gets the team going in. I think he gets the crowd going. Whatever is going on with him personally, I wish him nothing but the best. I thought I read during the season that he was supposed to return around week 7, week 8, something like that. And I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe he just had a baby too. So who knows what's going on with Tariq? Again, I wish him nothing but the best. But part of me does want him back on the team, just because he does bring that energy. I don't think Montgomery would be the player that he is if it wasn't for someone like Tariq Cohen to have as a teammate and to have like a little partner in crime, so to speak.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that, because if that's true, and that the new Bears brass isn't very pleased with Tariq, if he's taking up a lot of cap space, I could probably see them saying bye bye. But if it's not a big cap hit, or he's not taking a lot of cap space, I could probably see the brass maybe keeping them just because of that. But again, we haven't seen him play in 2 years. So I really don't know. You don't know what the mindset is of what Ryan Poles and the rest of the brass is going to do. But it's going to be something to look out for, I believe.
All right. Just a couple more topics before we call it a day. Christine, the Chicago Blackhawks honored Nicholas Johnson, a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, last night as part of their overtime win against the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, the trade deadline is coming up. I think you could say goodbye to Marc-Andre Fleury since the Blackhawks are nowhere near the playoff chase. Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, and I believe Alex DeBrincat are free agents, I believe, after next season. I'm not sure, but Patrick Kane says he wants to be a Blackhawk for life. Where do you see the future of this Blackhawks organization?
I would like. There's definitely something new coming, especially when they just hired their new general manager. I think he's going to bring a new atmosphere, a new camaraderie to the organization. They need that after the season, the start of the season that they've had. I do hope that guys like Kane and Toews, I do hope that they stay a Blackhawk. But it depends on where they see the team going forward. Do they see another championship with 2 veterans or 3 veterans, whatever? Or do they see it maybe with 1 or 2 veterans and just a completely whole new team? I don't know. It's like what we were saying with the Bears too. They're kind of, you can't really read them at the moment, especially with new management just taking over. So I think it's kind of a waiting game at this point, in all honesty.
I feel like I've listened to to Mr. Davis in interviews. He seems like a very straightforward. He's very open. He's very honest. I like that he said rebuild. I know a lot of Blackhawks fans don't want to hear that, but I think that's probably something that they're going to have to do if they want to perhaps maybe contend with also the other stuff going on. We'll see what happens with Kaner and Toews. I know that Kaner especially wants to stay a Blackhawk, but you still got the Jones brothers, and I think Seth has the bad contract, so that's another issue that they got to figure it out. DeBrincat, who won that game for them against the Oilers last night, so. I don't know, but I'm sure they'll figure it out. I mean, they got other problems, the Blackhawks do, so hopefully they can figure that part out. But and the way they're treating some of their TV guys, we've talked about it, the last couple of shows, Pat Foley and also now John Weidman.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Again, there's no shade to all the younger folks. They're all about your age, Christine, who are doing. They all do a great job. Jason Ross, who we've had on. Kaylee Chelios, Chris Vossers, hopefully we'll have him on at some point. Kobe Cohen and all the other guys, Mike Monaco. They've all done a really great job. It's just that the way they're treating the old guard. That's the big issue. So what do you think about that, Christine, real quick?
Yeah, I don't think I could explain it any better than what you did. It definitely they're trying to appease to our generation, obviously. And I know, like what you said, they don't want to hear the word rebuild. Nobody wants to hear that with a team, especially when it's a team like the Blackhawks that's created a dynasty pretty much, and then just have a bad year not too long after that. So all teams go through it. I think there's going to be some sort of a restructure, whether that includes, like what you said, Toews and Kane. It's yet to be determined.
Last question for you, Christine, before we close out. The final line as we go to college basketball. The smaller conference tournaments are concluding this weekend. Of course, the big Power 5 conferences are this time next week. But I want to ask you about the final line. Of course, they beat Penn State last night for their 21st victory of the season. Of course, by this time next week, they'll be playing hopefully deeper into the Big Ten tournament. Where do you see this a final line? Do you see them as a Final Four team, or do you see them bowing out perhaps in the earlier rounds like they did last year?
I think they're hungry, that's for sure. I think that loss left kind of a sour taste in their mouth, and I could tell that all those kids on there, they wanted it. So I think they have a chance to make it to the Final Four, but it just depends on how much fight that they have in them. Do they want to go beyond, and do they want to erase whatever happened last year, or are they just going to be like, okay, we're just getting back into it. Let's see how this all plays out. So I do see them potentially going into, maybe even the Sweet 16. Why not?
Could be interesting too about the matchups as well. Now, on what are you guys looking forward to this weekend? We got the college hoop season winding down. We talked about a little bit some of the NBA matchups that are coming up this weekend. What are you guys looking forward to? Sid, I'll start with you.
Of course, that Bulls-Bucks game tonight is on ESPN nationally, locally, as I mentioned, on NBC Sports Chicago. Hopefully nothing too crazy comes out with the Grayson Allen situation. If they give him a hard foul, so be it. Let's not do anything too stupid because this game is much more important to the Bulls.
Right.
We know the league is watching. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is watching. Obviously, it's on ESPN, so the whole world is watching. Hopefully, the Bulls can compose themselves and take care of business there. And also, number 2 in college basketball. Hopefully, the Loyola Ramblers, as we mentioned, they knocked out Illinois last year in the NCAA tournament, but hopefully they can make it to their conference tournament game this year in the Missouri Valley.
Right.
Christine, I know you guys like something like golf tournament. Congrats to your guy for winning one of the nationwide tournaments over the weekend.
Yay!
Yes, he is the 2022 Bakersfield Open champion. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, he had a really good round. I'm very proud of him.
So, like, does he have any other tournaments coming up this weekend, or what are you looking forward to this weekend?
He just wrapped up one yesterday because it's raining out there in California. So they did 2 rounds in one day yesterday. So they played 36 holes. He got in the top 15, so he did really well. But the Summit League here is in town in Sioux Falls, so I'm going to catch a couple of games of that tomorrow. That's for sure. But yeah, I think right now Chris is just he has one tournament next week. I think it's a day tournament, and then he's got a little bit of a down period.
Oh, cool! Excellent.
Yeah, so it's been a really good couple of weeks for him.
Oh, great! We're telling we're cheering for him. And
you guys saying that, yeah.
Tell him we're gonna be cheering for him, and gonna be just keep on, keep it going. Hopefully he can do that.
Yeah, I'll tell him that. Thank you.
No
One day
problem.
he'll probably be playing in the Masters. You never know, since the Masters coming up early next month.
That's the goal.
Yeah, let's hope so. I'm looking forward to like you said, so hopefully Loyola can make a nice run here in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament and perhaps get into the dance. That way, don't have to sweat it out next Sunday. A lot of NBA games you guys mentioned. Just a lot of really great. Look, there's no baseball, but there's other sports going on all over. Well, with soccer and such, MLS, and of course, the Premier League and whatnot. So still a lot of sports, going on too, folks. So yeah, no baseball, but get into some of the other sports, especially with college hoops, kind of getting down to the wire here this season.
Yeah.
Now on that note, you follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter and at Keena McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. Thank you to Cheryl Raye Stout from WBEZ in Chicago, the A Sports reporter, for joining us, along with Christine as well. Thanks to both of those ladies joining us. You can make sure you download the Sports Zone Chicago app. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast at War on Anchor. And make sure you follow War Media at WAR Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And as always, thank you very much for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. Christine, where can people find you on the social media streets?
They can find me at Manika _KXRB right there.
Keep it simple. Nothing simpler than that.
Yes. Make sure you listen to Sports Zone and watch and listen to Sports Zone. Listen to Second City Sports every Monday, every Friday, right here on Sports Zone Chicago from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. One more again, as Christine and the younger kids would say. Make sure you catch Second City Sports every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeena, take us home.
I know it's a little warmer out there all over the country. I know it's going to be like in the 60s in some
it's
parts
like
of
a
the
heat
area.
wave.
Hey, okay.
Here tomorrow. Wow, it's going to be raining here.
That's okay. It'll get, look, like I said, you'll probably get the warm up whenever we're getting here. Yeah, well, you'll probably get the warm up here next week over there for sure. So for Sid and Christine, I'm Lakeena. This has been Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. And look, if you're not getting vaccinated, wash your hands and just be good to each other. And we'll see you Monday and enjoy the sports.
Go Bulls. Holla.